Hello everyone and welcome back to another video, and of just a few seconds ago, as of recording this video, the second Republican primary presidential debate has just concluded. So yes, this video is going to go over the 7 candidates and their challenges and successes throughout the debate. Who won, who lost, and who really surprised me. And with that, let's get into it. So I'm here on the only article that I've seen that goes into an overview of the debate in full, as of course it's only just ended 2 minutes ago. This is CBS News, this article here, and it features the 7 candidates. I won't go into the content itself, but I am just going to acknowledge that it features all of the different candidates and their political criteria or lack thereof. So I find this a good structure for me to be able to go through the different decisions that every candidate took. So, before I begin, I'd like to say that I was wrong in that Doug Burgum was, in fact, present throughout that debate, which surprised me. The NBC article that stated that he had reached the criteria in order to participate was accurate. So I apologize for getting that wrong in my previous video. I'm going to structure this video as follows. I'll talk about each of the candidates, not necessarily in a specific order, and particularly how they interacted with each other, what talking points they hit on, what kind of sound bites you might be hearing over the next few days, and what different events occurred that will really push their campaign into a significant position. With that, let's get started. So I'd like to first of all talk about Ron DeSantis. He's always the one that people want to hear about first. And I've got to say that Ron DeSantis really surprised me throughout this debate. I was not expecting the decisions that I've seen from him throughout it. He again took the decision to stand back and appeal as someone who was going to answer the questions and get down into the nitty-gritty details. And that was not unexpected. He wanted to stay away from the petty squabbles of certain individuals, who I'll get into in just a moment, and instead he focused on details and answering the questions. I can recall only one moment whereby he was caught significantly off guard, and that was in regards to his position on fracking and offshore drilling. There was a comment made by Nikki Haley, who will come up in exponential detail in this video, whereby she claimed that Ron DeSantis had banned certain amounts of fracking offshore. And DeSantis had a bit of trouble picking up on that and being able to persuade off of it. Now, this was an interesting mark to make. In regards to the efficacy of the statement itself, I think it's going to come down to a piece of controversy, and it's generally going to be seen as something that was not up to him. Perhaps it was a method that was legislated, or perhaps it was a legal loophole. But nonetheless, it is going to negatively impact DeSantis, particularly considering that he wasn't able to really strike back against Haley. There was a comment made at one stage against Christie, whereby in 2010, when he was just elected to the gubernatorial position of New Jersey, he provided support for amnesty programs and paths to citizenship for illegal immigrants. And that was taken as a comment from, I believe, Vivek Ramaswamy. But in regards to how DeSantis skewed it or framed it as an issue that will really affect people, he supported, and a number of other candidates supported, militarizing the border as a means to send the National Guard and security down there to prevent illegal immigration. Another solution that was proposed by Vivek Ramaswamy was to end the naturalized citizenship based on the prerequisites for the 14th Amendment for children born in the United States from illegal immigrants. So that is to say that those born to parents who have come to the country illegally are not natural-born citizens of the United States. This was taken as sort of slim opposition by Tim Scott, who claimed that the 14th Amendment is legally vague as a result of it being intended or designed as a means for slavery and such. Now, this kind of action wasn't supported necessarily or opposed. It wasn't commented on other than that by these candidates, but you could get a general feel that it was a fairly out-of-the-box idea, and it wouldn't be something that these other candidates proposed. Why I bring up Ron DeSantis talking about national service is that part of the strategy to militarize the border is as a means to, quote, based off of a comment that Nikki Haley made, get the United States' own territory under control. That is to say, before entering into a foreign conflict with NATO, with Russia, or with China, even, there needs to be a general understanding that the United States has a secure national policy in regards to immigration. That is a generally simple, pragmatic comment that all of these candidates have made, but the solutions are interchangeable. Energy policy is another big one that Ron DeSantis picked up on. Of course, we all know the trope whereby he mentions what they're doing in his home state of Florida. He's the governor and he wants people to know. He's been talking a lot about how they've been prioritizing rural energy. A quote that was made was that they're going to be choosing Bannock over Beijing. And I think that that kind of rhetoric is going to be really crucial to helping with states like Michigan, Wisconsin, because these states have crucial energy-based industries, especially, as I said, in the Midwest. And they're swing states, of course. So that is a good topic to hit upon. The quote is to unleash American energy, as you would have heard. Now, every candidate on here supports that, but that also ties into foreign policy. And I heard a lot of these candidates talk intricately about how protecting American energy means stopping trading energy and relying upon foreign entities such as China in order to help large conglomerates fund their industry. This was taken as a means to oppose Trump, in a sense, by Christie, who then said that Trump's fault was going after trade with China as opposed to preventing energy disputes and preventing relying upon their energy. And on that note, the anti-Trump rhetoric was stepped up from Ron DeSantis tonight. It was interesting to see just how much more he went up against Trump. And DeSantis actually, at several intervals, claimed that Trump was not fit or not committed to conservative Republican values, much like you would have seen Jeb Bush do it in 2016, because he wasn't willing to come to the debate. Now, the big notion from Christie on that regard was that Trump had no respect for the voters of the Republican Party because he wasn't willing to come here and make his claim. And he claimed also in a really interesting but also strong campaign message that he was hurting families by dividing the nation and by dividing politics in the Republican Party. He claimed that because of his rhetoric and because of his willingness to dispose of or to demean other Republican officials, he is not fit to serve the Republican Party again. So, wrapping up on Ron DeSantis, it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of rhetoric that he's now adopted is going to help or hurt him in the polls. Would I call him a winner in this debate? Not particularly. I think he did far better than he has in the past. I think he's performed much more focused. He didn't focus on the social issues. He didn't even, I don't think, mention the word woke. Those other candidates did. He focused on parental rights in regards to education. And he focused on instituting financial literacy courses in, I believe it's middle school, that he's done it in the Constitution for Florida. A generally popular policy in both the Republican and Democratic Party. So I wouldn't say that DeSantis lost this debate, but I will say that he stepped up a notch. I think it's going to be interesting to see his performance in the third and fourth debate. And I think particularly it's going to be interesting to see how his rhetoric adapts and changes over the next few weeks. It's going to be interesting to see whether he opposes Trump a little more. It's going to be interesting to see whether he goes after woke ideology so much, or more so speaking about how it's important to allow the United States energy independence. So that's that from Ron DeSantis. Christie is another big one from this debate. Of course, in the same style that he did in the first debate, he went and he got his hands dirty in regards to how he went with other candidates. Not so much with Vivek Ramaswamy this time around, though. This time, he went up against Nikki Haley. Now you're seeing a growing trend here. He went up against Nikki Haley in one instance, I believe, as a result of the backlash that she had taken previously for flipping on Trump, once supporting and then opposing Trump. Christie called for consistency, you might say, in that Trump should be opposed fundamentally as a result of his betrayal of the Republican Party, as I've said, for the reasons of division, particularly in families in the party and the country itself, that he stated vigorously in his closing statement. But then, of course, you can hit back on that and say that Christie himself backtracked. He flipped after opposing him vigorously in the 2016 Republican debates and party and election. Christie was rudimentally opposed to him now, but then prior to that he wasn't. So they can easily make that debate again. But Christie also went up against Haley because he wanted to promote his experience in fighting for conservative legislation. His statement was that because he's the only candidate to come from a blue state, and a thick blue state at that, Christie is the only one who knows how to get policy through when it's opposed, when it's truly opposed by a legislature that is dominated by the opposition party. Now that's an interesting statement, and he also claimed that in his elections as governor of New Jersey, he performed incredible with Latin Americans, with women, with independent voters, and even with Democrats and moderates. That kind of rhetoric is crucial to the message that Christie is pushing, which is electability. Now there's irony in that for sure. But when you look at the facts, Christie is someone who would appeal to moderates. He is someone who would appeal to Latin Americans. And he is someone who would appeal to independents. His rhetoric is just that. His rhetoric is exactly fervently proponing of the idea that you can have conservative principles, you can uphold the respect for the Republican Party, and you can still work in the way that the legislature demands as a means to get policy through. That's one of his big things. So how does that weigh up in the debate? Well, I think it was fairly effective. I was hesitant, really, to say that he floundered a bit. I mean, you can talk all you want about how it's important to answer questions and it's important to not make political statements as only to invoke sound bites, but that is always what's going to get you votes. It is always what's going to get you national attention. How do you think Trump won? So Christie did that. And of course, right, there's going to be something that comes along about how Joe Biden is sleeping with the teachers union, and you will find out far more about that in the next few days. That was a tidbit from, I believe, Tim Scott. And there's also one about curtains from Nikki Haley and Tim Scott. But more so than anything, what voters want to hear is solutions to policy. So Doug Burgum, and just on a final note with Christie, is his answer to the idea that he was a hypocrite in regards to how to fund sanctuary cities or as a means to provide amnesty to illegal immigrants or a path to citizenship. He said that in the 13 years that have passed since he made that comment, the rules have changed. They'd no longer have the resources as a means to do that because of a failing national security policy and immigration policy. And he stated that as president, he would fix it. Would I call him a winner? I don't know. I don't know that I'd call him a winner. I'd say that he stuck to his message and he stuck to his guns, so to speak. But whether I'd call him directly implicit in what the Republican Party wants to hear, I wouldn't say that. and I wouldn't say that he's necessarily capitalized on the message that people want to hear. So I'd call him a neutral, probably edging more so towards a loser in the debate, based purely on the fact that he didn't answer the question so much as he did appeal to rhetoric. Compare that to someone like Doug Burgum. The commentators on the debate, this is not the moderators, these are the members of Fox Business who would come in during the intervals. They commented heavily on how someone like Doug Burgum was focusing critically on how to support and how to fix the issues that they are being presented with. He went into the nitty-gritty. He didn't focus on rhetoric or sound bites or getting into petty squabbles. This man answered the question. And for a guy that I and others think shouldn't be on that debate stage, that is impressive, and that will get him somewhere. The biggest one is childcare. He talked about childcare policy in regards to education and how they were able to set up the resources necessary to make sure during the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic that kids were able to get back into childcare once the crisis was over. And that was critical considering the current state of the education system in the United States, particularly after the pandemic and the state of funding and charter schools that is causing controversy between the parties. And then, of course, you get into student loans. One of the big things about the Department of Revenue that every single one of these candidates is going to get behind is taking away the welfare state, and promoting dollar stability. That is rhetoric key to people like Vivek Ramaswamy, key to people like Tim Scott. But every single one of these candidates will generally support it. Now, previously I've talked about how Doug Burgum went on more so about his rhetoric and more so about the general vibe of integrity and honesty and as such in his interviews. But tonight there was a different tone. Tonight he went into the issues and he talked about what he will do to help the voters and to help the people. And that can get you a long way. So how will that help him? Well, I think I actually would call Doug Burgum a winner in this debate, based purely on the fact that he stayed away from the petty squabbling, but not so much that. He was also able to avoid attacks. Can you believe that? Avoid attacks from people like Nikki Haley, from people like Vivek Ramaswamy, from people like Christie. And when you are strong enough or slick enough to do that, that is really good for your reputation. I'd absolutely call Doug Burgum the winner in this debate, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how he performs in the next few weeks. Previously, I would have stated that he could drop out as soon as next week, but now I'm not so sure. Now I think he might have a chance to at least get into the third or maybe fourth debate if his polling increases or improves with his performance in this debate. So watch out for him. Then we come up to the former UN ambassador and former governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley is someone that I brushed over in my previous video examining the first debate. As I've said in the past, that was a mistake. I believe her to be a winner in that first debate. And look at her polling. Good Lord. It's gone up tremendously, as I stated in a video just a while back. So this debate, she certainly stood out. She went on the attack incredibly, all over the place. At any chance she got, she would attack Christie. She would attack Ron DeSantis. She would attack Tim Scott, and she would attack Vivek Ramaswamy. She went after all of them. My guess is that she wants to appeal to the idea that she is tough as nails, so to speak. She wants to remove herself of the flawed perception and the false perception that women aren't strong. Of course, she went heavily on the understanding that women could be just as effective in politics as men in the first debate. She mentioned the quote from Margaret Thatcher, if you want something talked about, ask a man. If you want something done, ask a woman. And that was what really set her into the spotlight. And she went on that rhetoric once again. Now, she didn't focus so much on the fact that she's a woman, but she did appeal as a strong and charismatic individual who didn't falter, who attacked when she needed to, and who pointed out the hypocrisy in some people. I want to talk about the curtains. The curtains thing is such a minuscule issue, but it's the principle that she proposed. The idea was that when Tim Scott first got into Congress, there was a set of curtains and a set of lavish furniture in a certain room that was funded for by taxpayer money. Now that, as a Republican, is going to do you no good. Nikki Haley went up against that and said that was hypocrisy. To say that we should lower taxes and to say that the Department of Revenue should be based on dollar stability, it's hypocritical then to say that based on the fact that your own office or a certain room of the Senate was funded by taxpayer money and given lavish curtains and lavish furniture. Tim Scott hit back. He said they were there when he got there. They were there when he got there. Well, to the voter, it doesn't matter because Nikki Haley pointed it out. She pointed out the offshore drilling controversy with Ron DeSantis. She pointed out the backtracking and the backflipping with Christie. And she pointed out with Vivek Ramaswamy how he had no experience and how they did not need on-the-job learning for the presidency. That was her words. So I think that's a very interesting piece of rhetoric. Would I call her a winner? I think I would. I think I would call her a winner. But I will also be very cautious and also outline how she did not answer the questions. She appealed completely to rhetoric and attacking the other candidates. There wasn't really a discussion as to the legislation that she would pass, the policies that she would enact, other than the fact that she would generally lower taxes for the middle class, promote family values. It's to be expected considering her upwind since the first debate. But it is there. And it is interesting. I would recommend watching her polling very closely over the next few days. And I think you'll be surprised as to how it improves. Former Vice President Mike Pence and former Governor of Indiana. Mike Pence. I think Mike is going for a certain rhetoric when it comes to his campaign. I think that's very clear, and I think everyone can see it. He speaks slowly. He appeals to your morals. And he talks in a kind of Midwestern to Southern accent where he can really appeal to you. Talking like this, talking slow. Doesn't work. Doesn't always work. Sometimes it can be really effective at making you look like a great and upstanding citizen. But when you're running for the presidency, as the commentator stated, you need to be able to talk fast. You need to be able to get on the attack. He didn't get on the attack. He didn't. He talked about his motor industry, though. In the state of Indiana, they talked about how they had the second largest automobile industry in the country, and how they brought 12,000 factories back into the states when he was governor. They talked about the successes of the automobile industry while he was vice president. But ultimately, you need to be able to talk about the policies themselves and what legislation you're going to pass through as a means to get these things done. You can talk about lowering taxes, all well and good, but when you are not willing to go on the attack, and when you are sticking to your morals, sticking to your values, sticking to simple aspects of the campaign, it's just not going to work. I'd call Mike Pence a loser in this debate. And I don't think that after his performance here, he's going to be doing any good over the next few months. And I don't believe that he'll be able to win this primary. That's not to say that he doesn't have a future in politics. Maybe as a motivational speaker. But Mike Pence, I don't think will win, and I don't think he has won this debate. We're getting down to the final two candidates here, and you'd be surprised to see how much I speak about Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. The man had a big voice in this debate, and he certainly knew what he was doing. So, Tim Scott, I don't believe he really stuck out that much in the first debate. Not that I mentioned him all too much. But I will say this. If the man was as quiet and hidden as a cheetah in the first debate, he was as loud as a lion in this one. Tim Scott was the first candidate to speak in this debate. He was the first asked a question. But immediately, he avoided the question. He talked about the general characteristics of the Republican Party. And he talked again about how the failures of his candidates and the rest of the stage were so prudent that they wouldn't have the experience nor the understanding to get through legislation and policy. Whereas Whereas he, a senator and a member of the Congress, would absolutely have the legislatory understanding to get through policy, to unleash American energy, to abide by social conservatism, and to understand moral values. That's basically all he said. Now, when I talk about it from Mike Pence's point of view, it's a clear loss, right? He didn't go anywhere with it. He didn't attack people. He talked about his own successes, fine. But what are you actually going to do when you're the president? That's what you have to talk about. What Tim Scott did is he had a doctrine. He had a 30-page report, you might say, of the failures of his comrades. And what he did is he turned that into a cannon that he fired at any point he could. He went aggressively against people like Nikki Haley, fervently against people like Nikki Haley, claiming, of course, against the Curtin scandal or such. He went fervently against Vivek Ramaswamy in regards to how to handle social media sites like TikTok. You'd be surprised as to who actually supported using TikTok in that side. Now, I know, probably not the most crucial of topics in the debate, but it is still there and it does still impact how voters look at you. Tim Scott in this debate came off as someone who was willing to get his hands dirty and who was willing to go up against people like Nikki Haley, who wanted to appeal and stick out as a inspiring person. Wouldn't be possible because he's, not fairly new to the game, but he doesn't necessarily have as much clout as someone like Ron DeSantis or Christie. So he needs to be able to really get in the ground, get his hands dirty. Would I call him a winner? I think I would. I think I'd be fine with calling him a winner, in the sense that he's been able to provide a much more fervent explanation as to who his character is, at least. And I think that's going to appeal really well to particularly minority voters and African American voters. Tim Scott pounded on the message that there was nothing good about slavery and claimed that Ron DeSantis had said at one stage that there were aspects of slavery that taught individuals life skills or something along those lines. Whether he said that or not, I don't know. Maybe we'll never know. But nonetheless, that is going to negatively impact DeSantis' stance with minority voters. It's going to improve Tim Scott's stance as an African American. So I'd call him I think I'd fairly confidently call him a winner. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how he performs over the next few weeks. Finally, we have Vivek Ramaswamy, who only yesterday did I learn his first name was pronounced that way. Vivek Ramaswamy, I'm going to easily tell you right now, was a clear winner. I don't think it's any question. You need only watch the first few sentences he spoke in the debate to understand that he has taken the quotes and the performance that he took in the first debate, and he has refined it to its core, which is rhetoric-based, not necessarily answering the question, but he does have policies that are much more extreme and out of the box than any of these other guys, which is something that people want, to an extent. People want to have policies that they know are effective, or at the very least try to solve solutions, or to provide solutions. And that is what Ramaswamy is claiming. He was incredibly articulate throughout the debate. He was incredibly loud. He did invoke the rhetoric, but he did go up against other candidates. He fought them. He proposed radical solutions as to how to fix the Department of Revenue, the education system, social media. And, generally speaking, he was very respectful of the candidates on the stage, which was something we didn't see last debate. Tim Scott went up against him for saying that they were bought and paid for, and then flipping back on that, saying that he respected them all. He said they were all terrific people. Maybe it's hypocrisy, or maybe it's just a change in attitude. But ultimately, it's going to affect the minds of people when someone so easily could supposedly change their perception of the individuals that they are debating. In this debate, Vivek Ramaswamy quoted on numerous occasions that he had great respect for everyone on this debate, and including Donald Trump, but that faith and that the idea of American exceptionalism did not belong to one specific person. That is exactly what people want to hear. Moderates want to hear it. Independents want to hear it. Individuals not even affiliated with the Republican Party or conservative values want to hear it, based solely on the message that it is not about the politician, but about their policies. about the rhetoric, and about the message that they are transposing. Ramaswamy did a great job at extending that message of goodwill into the hearts of the voters, and that is exactly what people want. That is exactly what people want. He talked just enough about the policies that he proposed as a means to sound as though he knew exactly what he was going to do on day one, while also appealing to moral rhetoric and basing the values of the Republican Party on conservative principles. I think he hit all the right notes, to put it simply, and I think he continues to do so. I think that he will certainly have a position of influence in the Trump administration if he is elected. Perhaps even a position higher than that. But that remains to be seen. So, to sum up, I'd call Ron DeSantis a fairly neutral position. I'd put him in a neutral position, and I'd say that his performance has improved since the first debate. I'd call Christie edging more towards someone of a loser and someone who really wasn't able to capitalize on the necessary rhetoric or policies in this debate. I'd call Doug Burgum a winner. I'd call Nikki Haley a winner. I'd call Mike Pence an easy-to-see loser. I'd call Tim Scott fairly confidently a winner, and I'd call Vivek Ramaswamy once again the winner of this debate. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.